We are kicking off today with Smackdown, and after a crushing loss at WWE Crown Jewel to Logan Paul, Rey Mysterio had an equally rough time during last night's show. When Smackdown started, it appeared that Rey would talk about losing the US title to the Maverick, but he didn't have the chance as the LWO quickly crumbled around him. Carlito appeared and accused Santos Escobar of betraying Rey at Crown Jewel by leaving the brass knuckles where Paul could get them, an accusation Santos rejected. Escobar headed to the back, followed by Rey and Zelina Vega, leaving Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde to back up Carlito when the cool superstar took on Bobby Lashley. With the Street Profits in his corner, Lashley flattened Carlito with a spear, and the trio of heels attacked Carlito after the match. While Rey emerged to make the save, Santos Escobar was in no mood to protect the man who had accused him of betraying the LWO and simply stood by as the beatdown continued. When Rey chastised Santos for this, Escobar seemed in two minds before attacking Mysterio from behind, and even placed Rey on the steel steps before drop-kicking him against the side of the ring. Mysterio was left injured, and it was up to Vega to try and stop Escobar from going further, and the former Women's Tag Team Champion was distraught and broke down in tears. With this heel turn, Escobar can hopefully escape Rey's giant shadow and be the dangerous villain we saw in NXT. And his turn should at least give Carlito something more to do than just be there. Escobar's heel turn was on the surface born out of frustration of being accused of betraying Rey, but is the former LWO ally now taking orders from an entirely different faction? It wasn't too long ago that Dominic Mysterio became pals with Logan Paul, the same Paul who benefited from Escobar leaving the brass knuckles where he did at Crown Jewel. While they're not feuding, Dominic has never turned down a chance to stick it to his father, and we can't rule out that Dirty Dom at least encouraged Santos to take action in Riyadh last week. As for the match on SmackDown, Carlito's singles return was too slow, and would have worked better if he and Lashley picked up the pace, but having the Almighty win was the right call. It remains to be seen what's next for the LWO, if it even exists at all, but if it does, it certainly won't be the same after what we saw this week. When TKO Group Holdings launched in September of this year, the merger of WWE and UFC resulted in a ton of people losing their jobs. Staff from WWE as well as on-screen talent were cut as part of a money-saving measure, and now fans can expect even more cuts to happen in the future. During TKO's third quarter of 2023 financial report, it was said that there are plans to have more cuts, with jobs in IT, marketing, finance, HR, and legal being targeted. Like the staff cuts in September, these cuts will be so that there isn't an overlap with the UFC, who will have staff in those roles, and the plan is for those staff to work in both companies under TKO. WWE has said that between $50 and $100 million is expected to be saved, and that 75% of these cuts are expected to happen in 2024. It's never fun to lose your job, but that'll happen to a lot of people working in WWE soon enough, as the company continues to reshape its structure as they go into a new year as part of TKO. Despite his loss at Crown Jewel, LA Knight promised on SmackDown that he isn't done with Roman Reigns until he holds the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. The intense night was interrupted by Grayson Waller, who mocked Knight for failing to get the job done in Riyadh, leading to a war of words that had some pretty deep barbs. Knight completely roasted Waller, saying the Grayson Waller effect sounded like an STD and the Aussie was not allowed within 500 feet of a school, an ironic line considering Waller is a former teacher. The crowd went nuclear for the line and were louder for Knight than anyone else on the show, and after this war of words, the pair decided to settle things in a match. Despite the Aussie's best efforts, Knight got the win with a BFT, and after, the segment also saw the pair pour water on Kevin Owens' head after the match. Owens was filling in for Corey Graves, who was away on paternity leave, but the prizefighter had been warned not to attack anyone or risk being suspended. Despite this threat, the irate Owens attacked both heels and leveled Theory with a stunner, and later on, SmackDown GM Nick Aldis had no choice but to suspend the former Universal Champion. As for LA Knight, WWE made sure to keep him hot throughout the segment and his match, making him seem like a world beater who could easily challenge Reigns again sooner rather than later. Waller delivered in the ring and on the mic as expected, and while their segment ran a bit long, Owens being a riot on commentary helped make this match a highlight of the night. Kayla Braxton was also missing from this week's show as she was dealing with an illness that has been seriously impacting her voice, and we wish her a speedy recovery. When Roman Reigns returned to WWE TV in 2020, he did so as a heel, and after the Usos fell in line, the Tribal Chief would lead one of WWE's most dominant factions, the Bloodline. Of course, Reigns, the Usos, and Solo Sikoa are not the only members of the Anoa'i wrestling family, and one member nearly appeared on WWE TV, despite being with another company. Speaking to Steve Fall of Wrestling News, Lance Anoa'i revealed that WWE wanted to use him in the Bloodline's Tribal Court segment, but this was blocked by MLW, where Lance was signed at the time. Being blocked from the segment was especially tough for Lance, as MLW wasn't even using him in any capacity at the time, but they still didn't want him appearing for WWE. The segment would have featured as many members of the family as possible, but with Lance out and others unavailable, the actual segment just featured the talent we'd been seeing on TV already. Now Lance has been granted his release from MLW and has said that he could appear for WWE as part of the Bloodline, but we'll have to wait and see if that ever happens for the ex-MLW star. In pro wrestling, it's important that those in a promotion work together, and for the vast majority of matches, that means that somebody has to take a loss to further a storyline. Typically, a wrestler will be okay with taking the loss, but that's not always the case, as those in AEW found out during a recent episode of Rampage. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was explained that the October 27th Rampage was supposed to see Metalik lose a three-way match, which didn't sit right with the ex-WWE superstar. They write, "The show aired with only 3 matches, which was the original plan, as it was clarified to us there was never a plan to run 4 matches. Fightful Select was told that the original plan was a 4-way match involving Lince Dorado, Penta El Cero Miedo, Commander, and Metalik, but it became a 3-way due to Lince's ties with CMLL. Metalik was planned to lose the 3-way, but didn't want to continue to lose matches without being under a full-time deal. AEW indicated that they understood his position and booked Konosuke Takeshita versus Kyle Fletcher instead. While AEW management understood Metalik's position, we imagine his behavior won't have helped his standing in AEW or how he's seen with those contracted talents in the company. Whether Metalik earns a full-time deal with AEW, that's for Tony Khan to decide, but until that happens, don't expect to see his shoulders get pinned too many times. Commander didn't face Metalik on that episode of Rampage, but he could soon be dropping the AAA Cruiserweight Championship due to AEW. In The Observer, it is noted that AEW pretty much wants Commander every Saturday for Collision, which is difficult for AAA's booking because their TV tapings are often on Saturday. In addition to holding the company's Cruiserweight title, he is one half of the AAA World Tag Team Champions, but because of AEW, Commander's days with the gold may be numbered. Back to Smackdown, which was the first episode since Kairi Sane's return to WWE at Crown Jewel, and while the Riyadh show teased potential issues between her and Bayley, those are all in the past. Despite Sane being written off of TV in 2020 with an attack by Bayley and Sasha Banks, the two put their differences aside last night, and Sane became an official member of Damage Control. The former IWGP Women's Champion was immediately given the chance to prove herself, as in the main event, she, Bayley, and Io Sky faced Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, and Asuka. Much to the surprise of the fans, Asuka turned her back on Queen and the EST to become Damage Control's 5th member, in a move that does make sense if you think about it. After all, Asuka has a positive past with multiple members of Damage Control, namely Sane and Sky, and lost the women's title at SummerSlam to Belair in a match that also involved Charlotte Flair. With Damage Control going from a trio to a quintet, expect the group, minus Dakota Kai, to be in action at Survivor Series, likely in a women's Wargame match. Now, with all the free time he has these days, CM Punk has plenty of time to tease things on social media, but this week it was WWE's own Grayson Waller that teased Punk himself. Sharing a photo of himself in the commentary table, Waller captioned the pic with, "Even on commentary, nobody can touch me," a line fans may remember from Punk's June 2011 pipe bomb. Many fans in the comments pointed this out, and Punk himself replied, sending a single kissing emoji to the Australian superstar. While WWE is not actively pursuing Punk at this time, you can never say never in wrestling, and if he does sign, Grayson Waller would love to give the Chicago-made star the rub. So, will CM Punk return to WWE? That's a question that's been on the mind of fans since his AEW exit, and reportedly something Punk has tried to make happen. In the days before his infamous 2014 walkout, Punk was feuding with Kane, who was part of the Authority at the time, and does the Big Red Machine expect Punk back in a WWE ring? Speaking at the Icons of Wrestling convention, Kane was asked about the rumors of a Punk comeback, and said if it were to happen, it'd be a business decision. Kane may still have a bit of his corporate side left, as he said the decision would have to be based on what WWE thinks is best for business, and admitted that he hasn't been following Punk's controversy. Kane hasn't followed Punk's AEW brawls, but plenty in WWE are well aware of what has happened, but we can never count out WWE and CM Punk working together in the future. On this week's Raw, Adam Pearce announced a men's Wargame match for Survivor Series, pitting the Judgment Day against Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, and Jey Uso. When Wargames came to the main roster last year, it was 5-on-5 contests, and that could still be the case, despite this match being announced. In The Observer, it's reported that Drew McIntyre is being considered to join the Judgment Day's team in a move that would complete his heel turn. Rather than replace someone in the Judgment Day, though, McIntyre would be a fifth member, meaning that the faces would need an ally of their own, but there's no word on who it'll be. With 2 weeks to go before Survivor Series, WWE will have to make an announcement soon if they go with this plan, but we could be seeing Drew enter Wargames for the second time later this month. Do you want to see McIntyre align with the Judgment Day, and if so, who should join Team Rollins? Let us know down in the comments. More from Smackdown, as this week's show saw the build towards Survivor Series Wargames, but one name who didn't appear on the broadcast is AJ Styles. That's despite reports of Styles making his return at the show, with AJ being advertised for the event, but obviously that didn't happen. PW Insider reported that Styles' return was pushed back, but didn't give a reason why, especially as AJ is said to be 100% medically cleared and ready to return. AJ Styles was written off of TV with an attack from the Bloodline, so it makes sense for his return to see him target Roman Reigns and his allies, and while that could still happen, it wasn't meant to be this week. In a battle of two of WWE's most athletic superstars, Dragon Lee faced Cedric Alexander, and while the bout was shorter than it should have been, both men showed their skills. Lee, who got the win, showed how smooth he is, while Cedric showed he still has a well of untapped potential that WWE could be wise to finally make use of when they can. And that was Smackdown, guys. How do you rate the show? Sound off in the comments. It was in June last year that Vince McMahon stepped down from WWE, and a month later, the hush money scandal and allegations of misconduct would lead to the chairman retiring. Fans thought they'd never see the day, and while McMahon has since returned to WWE, he's not ready to talk about what did or didn't happen regarding those women who have accused him. In a report from Fox News, McMahon was asked about the allegations of sexual assault, but the TKO executive chairman declined to give a comment about the matter. What we do know is that McMahon paid a substantial amount in hush money and reached a multi-million-dollar settlement earlier this year with Rita Chatterton, who has claimed for years that McMahon assaulted her on the limousine years ago. McMahon isn't out of the woods yet, as a spa manager has alleged she was assaulted by McMahon in 2011, and there's a federal investigation into the chairman at this time. Vince McMahon recently unloaded 8.4 million shares in TKO, but still has plenty of stock remaining, and we'll have to see what the future holds for him once the investigations into him are finished.